Hello and welcome again to our fireside chat with developers and publishers, where we discuss beautiful collaborations and a story in depth behind the scenes on how it came to be. For all the developers out there looking to establish partnerships, and you will today understand a bit better on the different side how the collaboration works. And we have a bit of a special guests today. But before we went into that, again, around introductions for everyone who missed yesterday, who am I? I'm Borys. I'm working in remote control productions in Munich. We are a family of game development studios. And for those studios, me and my colleagues are giving a bunch of services like representations, business development. You might have heard previous story from the guys developing the game that they don't have time to actually develop a game behind going to other conferences. We do it for them. And with me today are two partners, Colon Knights and Plethora Project, with representatives Anlu Liu and Jose Sanchez. So, Anlu, would you like to introduce yourself, where you come from, and what your company is about?
Yep, thank you, Borys. And nice to meet everyone here. Thank you so much for joining today's session. For Colon ourselves, Colon Knight started back in late 2017, so it's actually more than 5 years now. We don't really call ourselves a publisher, but actually more like a gaming fund that supports exceptional developers across the world. We focus on PC, console, premium games with no genre focus. We always make fun that, we are a portfolio. We are a world where we sign both Spiritfarer and Scorn, even though they are, super different game. One is cozy, one is horror. So, but, in general, we want to sign games that we like and we enjoy. And right now we've already invested in over 50 projects, including the two titles I mentioned just now, but also Sifu and of course, Jose's title, Common Herd. And in terms of the way that we work, we sign games that we like, but at the same time, we want to sign games that are looking to doing self-publishing. This means that we want to provide all the creativity and business type of freedom for developers. And ultimately, the goal is that after developer work with us, they actually become more independent after working with us. So should I move on to Jose? To talk about, his great game and his great studio.
Yeah, please, Jose, tell us.
Right, thanks, Borys, for having me. So my name is Jose Sanchez. I'm a game designer and the director of the Plethora Project. I'm also trained as an architect, and that's a little bit the story behind the studio. This is a studio that started looking at architecture, but also how do we design architecture through game design. We developed our first project, Blockhood, in 2016 and finished 2017. It was published with Devolver Digital, which was a city building simulator, but really with an emotional take on ecology. And from that project, we really started kind of a much more longer term project, which is our current game, Common Hood, that was recently released on Steam, and a partnership with Kowloon Knights that really was interested on the process of supporting a long-term vision for this project, a project that is very emphasized on building, on crafting, on customization, and the way in which people can actually build amazing things together. And we have a vision to really take this not only within the gaming space, but really kind of expand it into reality. We were part of a little documentary called From Gaming to Making, right? Or gaming the real world in a way. So we have really kind of beautiful ambitions about how the games that we're producing could actually, go places maybe that are a bit unexpected.
Yeah, wow, sounds impressive. And especially after working with Devolver, I imagine you had quite high hopes for the next big project. So what I'm interested in is how it actually started your cooperation. How did you found each other, and where did you approach like for the first time? When did the pitch or the demo ended up on Anlu's table?
If I may, sure. So we definitely started, we didn't know each other personally. There was no kind of personal relationship. I started developing Commonhood, as a small team coming out of Blockhood, and really kind of looking for partners. The pitching process took probably 2 years. And I have to share, it was really brutal. Like just seeing the kind of offers that they're out there. It's such a big decision. And I think that just listening to some of the previous conversation, it can go either way. That process takes away energy on development. And in many ways, many of the conversations I was having with colleagues is that Kowloon Knights were kind of a dream partner in a way, right? The kind of relationship that you could potentially have with them, I think that was the rumor in a way, would be, very earnest. There was a sense of family or a sense of kind of a deal that would also kind of believe in, kind of a longer vision of the project. And we got an introduction. We started that pitching process, and really kind of sharing the longer term vision for the project was something that ultimately I think I was really happy that we were able to kind of move ahead on that collaboration, because it wasn't so much about specific targets. It was kind of really holistically looking at what the project and the studio wanted to do as a whole. So from my side, it really started from scratch. Even that the relationship that we had with Devolver was really good. I think that this different kind of form of collaboration where we would actually self-publish became a great vehicle to kind of develop the project. Yeah.
So having almost 2 years in pitching before you signed with Kowloon, do you remember, Anlu, what was your first thoughts when you saw the project or the team that you worked with?
Right. I mean, I would love to share my side of the story. So like, Jose mentioned, this came in from referral, and then he started talking to a member from our team. And I remember this, when we've seen this project is already at a very polished or mature stage where there was a build for us to try. We could play, we could spend hours on it already. And I think there are two big reasons why we signed the project. The first one is definitely the game itself. Like when we played it, we really, really liked it. Some of us even spent hours on it. And we see a lot of potential in the title itself, because like it could go into such details when it comes to building. And a lot of us really like building stuff, right? Whether it's in Minecraft or in other games. But for this game, Commonhood itself, for example, if you were to build a chair, you really need to start from scratch. So even the legs and stuff, you need to build from blocks. So this means there's actually a lot of like possibilities or creativity that could happen when it comes to building inside the title. So we see a lot of potential in not only multiplayer, but if you build something nice, you can share blueprints with your friends. I think that really attracted us quite a lot. And then in the pitch deck itself, like even if you go to check out Commonhood Steam page, you can see some of the buildings that, probably Jose did himself. And it's just crazy. It looks like a building that you can see from a magazine, like a Japanese magazine about a cool building somewhere. So I think being able to see what are the cool stuff you can build from the pitch was very, very appealing to us. And then I would say the second biggest reason why we invested in the project itself is definitely because of the team. Because Jose also mentioned, he has an architecture background and this is a building game, right? So we're very impressed about his background into coming into building a title like this. And also because Blockhood was a pretty successful game, right? And this one is really building on top of the experience from Blockhood, at least from our point of view. And I think one thing to specifically mention that we really, really liked is we see the ambition in the team itself. Blockhood is a 2D building game, but Commonhood is a 3D building game, right? And we want to be able to invest in teams that are trying out new things, that are stepping out of their comfort zone. And that's what we see in Plethora project, right? They're trying to build a bigger scope games. They're trying to handle a bigger title. And, these are, I would say, the two biggest reasons why we invested in the project itself.
Yeah, definitely. Just looking at Commonhood and what kind of message it conveys about community, bringing people together and actually creating something great. This is in part also reflected in your relationship, and this is really great. But overall, just to understand the size of the operation you're running. So we have a better idea of amount of teams, amount of pitches you look through the years, because Plethora project is quite special in that. How many pitches do you receive like in a year roughly?
A lot, I would say, over 1,000 projects per year. And we always tell our developers, we've reviewed 2,000, 3,000 projects in the past 5 years, and we only signed 55. So we are very proud of, what we have selected to be part of Kowloon. And we, like our founder, Alexi, always tells us, you don't really take too much into, projects that you have missed. But, really be careful of what you sign and make sure that's something these are the projects that Kowloon are proud of. And we think that we see something very special in it. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So talking more about specifics. So we went through this point when you like the project, Jose liked the partner, and after 2 years of pitching, you signed up together. The project, by the way, was released just around 2 weeks ago on Steam, so everyone could check it out. Please, people in the chat, I think the DevGamm team will post a link, so definitely wishlist it, check it out. Currently, there's a sale going on, so I don't know if it's going to be on sale because it's just released, but maybe on the next one you get it, or get it right now because it's super fresh and going to be developing more. So how much time passed since signing the project and actually releasing it?
So yeah, the project has been in development for 5 years. So probably the first 2 years from the prototype, the pitch that already had a working, as Anu kind of mentioned, we had a project where you could actually, play a lot. All the building mechanics were there. It certainly needed a lot of polish. But once we signed, I think it's been more than 2 years of production at this point, and there's been challenges and delays along the ways. But yeah, the project really, in a way, became a quite ambitious project. We are a very small team. We're a small team of 4 at the moment, but obviously an expanded team of people that have collaborated with the project. But as Andrew mentioned, there was a lot of knowledge that we acquired from Blockhood, but a lot of things that we really wanted to do that were very new, and we wanted to innovate on, and we didn't want to just follow a blueprint that existed in terms of a kind of crafting systems. We wanted to put something out there, and I think that some of the biggest risks of the project were always just how do we kind of innovate on the way in which people craft things and so on. So it has taken time, but in a way, I always share from the very beginning, this is kind of a passion of us as a studio, and it's something that we want to continue supporting and developing for a long time. We're really setting up the foundation for something that should be a long-lived project, right? And that's something that we certainly want to continue demonstrating with post-launch patches, updates, and content that will be coming out. Really championing, or kind of admiring games that have done that very well in the past, and I think that we can follow suit on kind of maintaining a lot of a great relationship with that community, just because of the passion for this particular subject matter in a way.
Yeah, this really sounds amazing. So for everyone interested in architecture, I see there's a link in the chat already. Check it out. But to talk a bit more, so once you signed the project, what were the parts that were given by the partners? So as I already explained, there was a passion for the subject, really the desire to create a perfect game to represent all those architectural nuances and how you build things from little blocks. What did Kowloon bring to the table apart from funding?
Right. So, we are, unlike normal publishers, I would say we are more hands-off partner. So this means we don't really normally do like weekly check-ins or monthly check-ins, but we do have a Discord channel. So how it works is that after we sign with Jose, we invite him to our big Kowloon family Discord where all our 55 titles are in it. Then that's the place that I feel like it's also something that very valuable that we want to provide to developers, is that interaction with other portfolio titles within the Kowloon family, and to share resources, to share knowledge among that. But of course, like each team would have a dedicated channel where they would check with us. They can ask us anything, they can ask us feedback, they can ask questions there, where the entire Kowloon team would be able to check out and answer those, right? So in terms of stuff that we want to be able to offer to our partners is really things that they need. And I would say, like, even though Jose is a small team, and even within our Kowloon portfolio is probably one of the smaller teams, they are super independent developers, which is something I think we really appreciate working with them. So like I mentioned, during the introduction, we're looking for teams to do self-publishing. So what it means is that we don't have an in-house marketing or QA or localization team, but we have people in our network. There are developers that work with other agencies out there that we can provide our recommendations. So for other developers, if they need this sort of help, we're here to provide recommendations, connect them with third-party agencies and stuff like that. But specifically on Jose's situation, I would say, like, they were super prepared since the beginning working with us in terms of self-publishing. So they already identified, what marketing partner to be working with, what localization company to use. So in terms of these, I would say, like, these areas, like, Jose really didn't need a lot of help from us. Then we stem in on stuff that Jose might need a bit more support in, right? And it could be stuff like platform relationships. So we pitch to platforms regularly on our portfolio, and then we actually connect the developers directly with these platforms. So Jose was in, Jose was talking to different platforms himself as well. So he's involved in all the email chains, and he was actually driving these conversations, which might not be something that we get working with the publisher. So this is something that I want to offer to developers, and that's what we offer to Jose, is to build that relationship with platforms, to know exactly, in the future, like, who to reach out to, what are the terms, what is a good and bad terms, and to provide a lot of advice and knowledge around that. And then something else specifically would be, because I'm based in Hong Kong, so a lot of the stuff I do is also to recommend Asia partners to our developers. So in terms of areas like this where Jose might need a bit more knowledge and stuff, we're here to provide him. And I hope, these sort of support were stuff that Jose was happy with.
Yeah, if I could add to that, there is it's difficult to overstate how important it is to have the right partner like Kowloon at the right time. Just as Anu mentioned, initially everything is set up as a family. We have a Discord channel where people chat, like, more informally. We share, it's like, hey, look at this trailer. Like, there's this kind of rough cut of our trailer, like people saying, like, cut a minute from that, that's too long, or like try to kind of hit, like, feedback, and that might come from other developers, that it's not necessarily Kowloon itself. So there's a kind of a really strong sense of camaraderie, I think, and there is intelligence that you wouldn't have if we were all kind of disaggregated, right? If we were all kind of completely independent, you wouldn't be able to kind of have a sense, oh, there is maybe there's a good or bad reputation from particular partners, or an opportunity here to kind of expand a publishing wing, let's say an Asian partner or something like that. Market intelligence that could be aggregated. There's kind of great, things that you would normally have maybe with a publisher, but I think that it's done differently in a sense that all the studios maintain their independence. And what I found really kind of encouraging is that Kowloon Nights tells you, well, you should grow your own community. That's going to be an asset to you as a studio. And the relationship that you're going to establish with that community is not something that we want to kind of take away from you in any way or kind of lead. So we were forced, we had to learn as well a lot how to kind of open up a wing of our studio that would just deal with, community management, like relationship with our community in such a way that that relationship became much more informative and created feedback for the game, right? And it's something that we've been, attuned ever since. So yeah, in other cases, I imagine, right, like, that might be handled, separately by a publisher. But in this case, yeah, the challenge was certainly a challenge, but at the same time, it was a welcome challenge to really kind of get very close to those community relationships. And what I was mentioning before about the kind of almost acupuncture, like Kowloon Nights would be able to really provide help or a kind of a one conversation in critical moments on when the project really had to take a really important decision regarding partnerships, regarding timeline, regarding critical points, right? Just knowing that we could tap into a kind of a very kind of conversation that is not just, hey, this is just a person that is funding your game. It's rather kind of a team that is really wanting to succeed with you and wants the studio to succeed. So I felt really comfortable, to be honest, to really kind of put on the table, this is kind of the challenges that I see, this is how I'm approaching the problem, and really having conversations that that are critical at different points in the project. So it might seem hands-off in some capacity, but it also kind of offers an incredible amount of strategic support when it's really needed.
Yeah, it really sounds like a true fellowship where you have a common goal to ensure the project is successful, but then there's many more people in the fellowship who have different quests, side quests, their own opinions, and you can come to every one of those. So if I got it right, you also can communicate with studios who previously released the project in Colon family. So you can come to other founders and talk with them, and you will then have the sense of community that is so close also to idea to your game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So on day-to-day basis, then you explained that you have more or less like centralize the means of communication, but then you only get back to that whenever you have a specific question. So how do you tackle the challenges of this? So of course, I can imagine you all still being remote. Have you ever met each other throughout the time of collaboration in person?
No, actually, for the question about funny point, that was one of the points I want to bring up. I've worked with Jose for 3 years, but we never ever met in person. But like in regards to this point, I think the pandemic is definitely very, very difficult for developers in general. People have to work remote from home. There were a lot of delays in a lot of the projects as well. But I think on our end, some of the measures that we try to help developers during this difficult period of time is that in our Discord channel, we had a lot of casual channels like pets and food and movies and TV show. We actually only implemented that during the pandemic because it was difficult for people to meet face to face. So we wanted these casual channels where developers can share about their daily lives. They can chat with people that are not necessarily within the team, but with like other folks and get to know new people. So these are the measures that we tried to help our developers during the pandemic, because we know it was very, very difficult. But I wouldn't say it is a challenge, because I think that we're quite active on the Discord channels as well. Like if Jose needs anything, he just message there. There are like 7 to 8 members on Kowloon. They're all inside. Like everyone is there to answer any questions. And then we were very used to, doing calls on Discord or on Teams whenever the developer needs feedback or anything. So yeah.
Yeah, it's great. The pandemic gave us those tools, but maybe you, Jose, have any perception from your end. Do you had crisis situation when Anlu and her team stepped in and helped you resolve things?
I think that there were maybe it ties to the previous question. I think there were several moments where we did feel like, hey, how do we do this, right? Like, how do we really tackle this? I think that a lot of uncertainty, right? So I think that the sense of trust that has been fostered by Kowloon was the kind of conversation. I think the tone of the conversation was always a sense of, how do we figure out this together? And there was never kind of an adversarial position there. I think the biggest challenge initially for the project had to do with the pandemic, right? Like the project really, we signed the deal, I think it was a month before a complete lockdown. And this is a moment where, we're celebrating, project gets funded, but suddenly shut down. And we basically have to start growing the studio and doing partnerships and figuring out how to work online completely, right? That really kind of not only marked the relationship that we could have with Kowloon, but also within our studio, right? With a lot of people within the studio, people that we work remotely as well. So it created a certain challenge. And initially I was very nervous that there was a sense of like how this pandemic is going to really strangle like something that you've been working for so long, a partnership that might, you never know how it would actually pan out, right? And we had, I remember that in our contract, it was like maybe a first milestone or something along those lines. And we were really trying so hard to just really go above and beyond in terms of like, demonstrating that even though we were kind of apart and kind of working online, that we would up for this kind of massive ambitious challenge that we were kind of putting together as a pitch, right? So that the first few months maybe felt like a lot of, it felt like very accelerated or trying to kind of deliver a lot. And I think that Kowloon kind of, the response was always kind of, oh, I think that we're seeing you, we're seeing what you're putting on the table. I think that you are, because there's that kind of gaining that trust, I think, at the beginning, right? And that was something that was handled very, smoothly. And I think that kind of relationship kind of grew over the years, right? But yeah, more than a crisis moment, there's been that kind of sense of development of trust and kind of conversations that, sometimes are, especially when you're dealing with legal issues or things that are kind of, you want to, let's say, sign something or you want to kind of figure out something a bit quicker. Some of those things delayed for months, right? And they drain sometimes the energy or kind of the timeline. So having them as partners with knowledge of like, this is going to take so much time, this is going to affect the project in such a way. It's been an incredible resource, and I'm happy that we're doing that partnership in a way.
Yeah, definitely sounds like you found really peace throughout the pandemic times and found your rhythm to actually deliver this project and do it together to the best of the abilities of both teams. So it's really good to hear. For anyone out there still struggling, I hope there's many studios getting built remotely. Maybe you have any tips or recommendations on anyone who's starting out now, having a great idea and getting new team on board to actually build something.
We were just discussing like there's like all the different kind of little platforms that we use. Obviously, there's so many of them. We ended up gravitating to use something called Miro, which is like a canvas where you can just drop out ideas. Like game design became less of a document, but rather kind of a place where we would hang out, where you would see people just joining in, like collaborators and like growing, big areas of the project and designing the project together. I'm sure there's others like Figma and things like that, software specifically. But I think that the channels that Kowloon implement, the social channels, I feel like sometimes guilty of not really engaging with those as much, but just knowing that they're there, that there are jokes happening in the background, that there's kind of a sense of like a community that supports, and then also a sense of I think that the emotional process and kind of the psychology of building games, because there's such long projects, right? Like we've been working on this project for 5 years. Just knowing sometimes that you can share, a screenshot or a kind of a trailer and material and get a sense of like support and kind of camaraderie. I think I find that kind of really useful, because it's difficult to maintain that energy all the time really high, and naturally you are going to doubt certain things at certain moments, and I think that community is really useful, especially even if you have to do that completely digitally. So making time and energy to kind of build that infrastructure, I think that's really useful and critical.
And Anlu, having even like more insight about more teams, maybe you see like some also unique parts of this, how people handle this remote environment, but maybe they never met in person.
I think especially Kowloon itself, we are super familiar with the concept of work from home, because even before the pandemic, because it's such a global team, like I've never met some of the members of the team actually, even though it was before the pandemic. So I think I would say in terms of stuff that I've heard from developers that are operating in this format, like some of the tips they might give would be like, don't hesitate to hire on Twitter. Like it might sound a bit sketchy, But actually, a lot of teams do manage to find very, very good talent on Twitter itself. Of course, you need to filter them, but you will be able to find very great talent, even if it's on platforms like Twitter, because we have had developers that have these sort of experience as well. And I think it actually opens up a lot, it opens up a much bigger pool of talents, because you can hire people from, for example, Southeast Asia, you can hire people in East Asia. It opens up so many possibilities, right? Because we're at a stage where people are super familiar with working from home. But I would say like an advice for this is that it really blurs out the time, and you might not have a sense of work. So my biggest suggestion is to really find the right balance between work and your own life. Like, it's very easy. Sometimes for me too, I just sit in front of the computer, and because we have people in America, with people in Europe, so we're kind of at a stage that, I start doing work in the morning, and then at night when my Europe colleagues wake up, you have to reply to emails and stuff. So I think it's really crucial to find a balance between that work time and also like your own time. So you do have to give yourself some time to rest and shut off your computer, close your emails, and and interact with people around you instead of just focusing on work. So I think that is one of my biggest advice I would give. But also I believe that it opens up a lot of opportunities because people are really familiar with this method of working right now.
Well, returning for the more of a specifics of collaborations between you two, we went through history from before signing, before establishing the partnership, throughout the pandemic and development time. And yeah, just 2 weeks ago, again, the launch happened. So what was then your expectations? What was the preparation period? Because it's like this is the culmination of everything that developer did throughout those years. So how did it look like in the weeks before? What did you felt? What did you help? What was maybe the problems to tackle together? Jose, tell us about how did you felt. And
yeah, so the release was something that we've been looking at for a long time, and in conversation, right? Sharing builds of the game. Yeah, giving the sense of like completion, and obviously the kind of support for, we realize that there's still things to be fixed and polished, we had a project that we had a sense of confidence that we really would be a really great game experience, and I think that we're still realizing how to improve that, and we're really working hard. So it's strangely enough, the release became a continuation in a way. Like, there is a kind of a sense of like a great milestone and a stepping stone, but maybe anticipating that what we want to do with the game and how we want to continue expanding the game. There was a sense of, well, we have to keep on improving this project, right? And that's something that we knew all along, in a way that it's a project that wants to have kind of a live support for a long time. And as we mentioned initially, our passion has been to do so. So yeah, I think that the conversation with Katerina has always been of support, of like looking at the bigger vision in a way. There are going to be moments of ups and downs. It's going to be moments in which the project might be celebrated. When we got recently kind of nominated for the Indicate Awards, we're really excited for that. And just like a few weeks before the launch, and and then we're certainly reading comments of community that still wanting the game to be improved in many ways. So there's a sense of like this collaboration is not just the game before we launch and it's done, but rather there's a continuation. In many ways, you kind of grasp the energy to kind of keep doing this. And if you don't really love doing the projects, the games, and this way service as well for the community, I think that you're not in the right place, because these games, once they go live, they become alive in a completely different way. So we're as busy as we were before launching, and we enjoy making the game kind of a better game, right? So we're excited to kind of keep on bringing updates and patches and all sorts of different content in the future as well to our community.
And on the side, do you have like also special anticipation or like high periods in the team where you like see, all right, this project is about to release, we're about to see like how it turns out. What's this period looks like usually in Cologne?
Right. I mean, of course, like yeah, of course it's, we are super nervous before the product releases. Like everyone will be like, oh no, oh yeah, Comet is coming out in a week. Oh my God, I'm so nervous on how well it will do. And I think like, Jose mentioned a great point, like since the beginning of the collaboration, we understand that this is a long journey. Like it's not going to end when it released, right? After release, we still want to be able to help support the team, especially because we see so much effort coming from Jose's team. Like within days, they've released so many patches already. So we know that this is like we see the commitment in Jose's team in improving the experience, adding more content, providing updates. And therefore, on our end, we should do our part in supporting them as well. Like if there are areas that, we need help from them, we are more than happy to provide these help. So even after after the release of the game, we actually scheduled follow-up calls with Jose as well to understand a bit on like his plans, his roadmap for the title, and then check in if there's anything that we could help. So yeah.
And going forward, so you still plan to expand this project? Do you already have ideas to like, hey, then once this project is done, we done the support, it's already living thing, people enjoying it. What's the next big thing? Have you already thought it or maybe discussed it between each other?
Well, I would stand behind, like, it hasn't been formalized, and I think that this is a little bit just sharing, even with the community, like what our roadmap is. There is a kind of a profound commitment to the project. I kind of admire projects such as No Man's Sky and others that have really continuously expanding, like what we set up the foundations on this game in terms of the crafting system, in terms of like the characters, the NPCs, like all the different things that you can do in the game. I think that we are just scratching the surface of what you can really do with the systems that we have in place, right? So I do anticipate expanding the content greatly in, at least for a year to come. And then, obviously we can start looking at how the future looks as well. So building materials, building systems, different kind of improvements to like the kind of multiplayer experience. That's certainly a component that we have, developed to a certain degree, but we think that there's a lot more potential there. So we really want to kind of continue expanding and have that conversation with the community. I think that this is a project that wanted to come out for so long, and we really wanted to put it in the hands of players more broadly. And I think that at this point we feel that we can continue expanding that experience as we go, because it does take time. For instance, in the game, anything you build, you can share with anybody, right? So we kind of circumvented the Steamworks kind of form of like content generation and content sharing. We kind of completely integrated it into the game. So the more people play, you would kind of come back to the game and you will see that there's more content that is being produced by players. So finding, good ways to filter the content that you might be more interested in, and really kind of revisiting the game might become, a project that can keep on gradually growing over time. At the same time, all those little creations that people do, they become little tutorials of how you could actually build something else. So it's a model, or kind of at least a hypothesis that it's a value proposition that will grow over time. So we really want to stand behind that for quite some time, and give it, the best chance for it to succeed in the long term, right? I have my kind of crazy ambitions about potentially building architecture out of a game. So if there's that possibility, and I saw a community conversation about how do you create like, a renovation or a tiny house with commonhood. And I feel really, excited when I hear conversations like that. I want to support communities that might want to do that, but at the same time, making the game, better in any way. So the future is certainly open-ended, but we really want to double down on what we have been building for 5 years, and certainly kind of expand on that.
Yeah, definitely. As users join, there's whatever the plan was before the release. I saw it before. People just built such crazy things you could never imagine when you were just building this tool set. So I'm also really looking forward to seeing what comes next. To anyone watching on YouTube right now, prepare your questions. You probably had a chance to look at the project, at the collaboration. So look at the previous, because Colin already mentioned they have more than 50 projects already in their portfolio. If you have questions about anything, but preferably, of course, about Flutter project, and Colin especially, let us know in the chat. We are going to discuss those in the last block. But before we go into that, I'm sure you also, apart from all the serious questions and challenges, had some fun together. And we already mentioned, like, being remote and never meeting each other is part fun, but in my opinion, it's a challenge, actually. So sorry for taking away this question from you, or this answer. But maybe, yeah, if there are other stories. So maybe during the prototype, you've been sharing like some things like, hey, look at this fun thing we can do here. Anything happened for that?
I think that there is like, it might not be as funny, but it's just, there's certain awkwardness, I would say, on starting to collaborate. Like sometimes I remember like having an email saying, hey, Jose, you can invite your team to our Discord channel. And suddenly I'm like, okay, great. I don't know really how this works, but we started kind of inviting a bunch of people to the channel. And then at some point it's like, wait, like, how many people are in your team? Like, what are you doing here? So there was a sense of how do we manage? What is the expectation? How do we kind of create the playgrounds where we could actually really collaborate? And so there's a calibration. There's a sense of crafting the kind of not the game itself, but the ways in which we hang out, the ways in which we collaborate, and sometimes we end up doing too much to the degree in which I think becomes counterproductive, right? Like there's just adding everybody to a conversation or kind of replying all to like emails. Maybe you've been in a situation like that where there's kind of too many people involved into a conversation. I think that just calibrating that became a little bit initially some kind of moments where we had to kind of understand each other. But in hindsight, it was, yeah, like not reading the room very well, and we can laugh about some like what was really implied in some of the lines. But I don't know, it's been rather like, yeah, more the kind of fun moments happen almost like sporadically in our kind of, I think in the background in some chat or in some room, like more than specifically an anecdote that we can share. I don't know, what do you think, Anna?
I guess what I want to share is definitely not funny, but I just wanted to share, why this project is also unique to me in a way. Apart from, how great the game itself, but because, Jose, when we signed Jose, the two persons that were main point of contact to the project actually both left Kowloon. Like Kowloon has been around for 5 years, and only like two or three people left the company itself. And coincidentally, it was the two main point of contact for Jose's project. So of course, there was some chaos efforts in handover to who would be the next main point of contact. But eventually, I started building relationship with Jose, especially starting with the Chinese marketing part of stuff. Like I was sharing knowledge with him. He was chatting with me about like his offers or terms that he's got. So I think usually when we were assigned to a project, we were assigned to it from the beginning, and then to when we signed it to when we launched, it's going to be the same person who's in charge of the project, where Jose is one of the only project, at least that I'm managing, that came in halfway. So I really treasure, the relationship that we built, and I'm glad, it worked out, and not put Jose in an awkward position because of that.
Yeah. So I can't see any questions yet, but if you have anything to add, Jose?
Yeah, no, I think that story sometimes it's difficult to anticipate how certain, in a partnership, there are kind of things happening within our team, and obviously I see some of the stuff that's happening within Kowloon, but by no means most of it, right? So because of the hands-off sometimes relationship, we would go, months just on our own, and yeah, there was always this kind of question mark. It's like, well, I was kind of, connecting with this person. But yeah, I think Anlu really brought to the attention that there was some kind of restructuring and opening up that door to her and Damon, who have been the people working with us for the last year, I think, or so. You wonder, like, I think that this is the awkwardness that comes from working online, right? Like, where sometimes if certain things become very explicit, if you're in the room or you're kind of like suddenly like meeting with different people. I didn't know exactly what was the organization within Kowloon that would actually lead. I knew that there were several points of contact, but I was never absolutely sure about the structure, right? But I think that those things ultimately get boiled down to, like, how the trust and the kind of conversations transpire once we do have those meetings, when we kind of really yeah, the kind of tone, I think, in the conversation. As I mentioned in the pitching process, sometimes you talk to people that you really want them to fund the project, but you realize very quickly that the relationship that you would establish with them would be a nightmare, or would be difficult to kind of sustain over time. And I think that it's natural that over many years of development, either us, we have different people that have come and go in the studio, and Kowloon, I think similarly, there's a kind of a understanding that there's kind of live events, right? Like, I think that it's a business, but at the same time we have to kind of have some flexibility and awareness that certain things need a reality check sometimes. So I appreciate that. I think that that's kind of the ethos of our studio as well, is really kind of looking at the people that we work with just as people, not only as the job that we perform. And we try to put that idea into the games that we do. So there's kind of we always reflect, it's like, how do we kind of live to the standards of what their games are kind of trying to say. But in that degree, I think that Kowloon Knights has been an amazing partner, because they I think they share that kind of value system in a way, or if that makes sense, that kind of a sense of integrity that I really appreciate.
Totally. I can see how many good partnership actually built on common vision, common values, and how you really understand each other on more bigger level than just personal, not just as individuals, but as a collective to collective relationship. Talking about that, and maybe let me quickly check a live chat. So the question from me about how you see the role of the games in a global culture. Because of course you're making a thing that I'm just looking at it, see hey, this is about DIY culture. This is about how we as individuals can build great things while collaborating. How do you see overall games changing the world? What are games in a modern culture?
If I may. So that's a big question, right? And I could give you a very utopian response. I actually write a lot as well. I'm kind of involved with academia, and I write about projects. So I'm highly optimistic about what games can do in the world. I think that that documentary that we mentioned, Gaming the Real World, kind of had a glimpse of how Minecraft, City Skylines, and in some capacity our small project Blockhood were really trying to kind of read the room of how people, players, and communities might want to find certain kind of mechanics, kind of relate, or kind of be relate to real world issues in a way. That's not to say that some people were giving us a lot of kind of a lot of advertisement or interest in Blockwood at the time, because they were thinking that we would be able to design buildings that would become real buildings, right? And the game was still a diagram of how the world works, right? But I think that by no means games should underestimate their audiences. I think that players are there. I learn constantly from what players are bringing to the table in terms of the challenges that are presented, how a problem is depicted. For instance, in Commonhood, we have so many conversations that are, characters that have very awkward relationships, that are maybe don't have the same worldviews, right? They have different perspectives on how they should go about creating their own community. And you, the player, don't really kind of resolve all that. There's kind of aspects that are kind of very unique to the character study encounter. And I think that makes characters quite realistic, and they resonate in a way with what players actually experience. So I don't like the idea of like presenting games that they can do everything and they would resolve big world issues completely. But I do think that they have a very important place to a conversation about what are the kind of aspirations and what is the kind of expectations of what maybe our communities could be. Like that's what Commonhood is trying to do in many ways. It's just offering a place where, you know, I'm playing this game, but I'm kind of also envisioning what a community could be doing if they were kind of struck by kind of you know, economic hardship, right? Which is something that maybe other people, you know, go through. So I think that they create these kind of narratives or aspirational narratives, I think, of what could be possible. And that could be a beautiful thing in my eyes, right? Like, and again, maybe games can do a lot more in different angles. I'm just talking about what maybe our niche of building community management kind of seem. I do think that there's a strong correlation with real world issues, and I think that players see that and they kind of offer their own kind of passion for those issues when they play our games.
Yeah, I can imagine someone getting inspired and actually wanting to create something like this, learning from the game and learning from your experience and your ideas that you put in there. But for you, Anlu, like for Colin, globally, what is then you trying to make with the games you fund and support? What do you want to see? What's your like ideal founder ideas looks like?
Right, I think like Jose summarized everything really well. Like whatever he believes, I believe the same too. I think games can be very impactful. And it's also, you know, when we're evaluating project, that's also one of the not criteria, but that's also something that we do look at, like, and we do appreciate a lot. And, you know, Jose has described, you know, what his game tries to share with the culture and everything. But we do have like, you know, other titles in our portfolio that also does the same. And I think it's very important. Like, for example, you know, Sifu is trying to share knowledge about the culture. So I think it's stuff like this that we appreciate and players would also appreciate. It's like a learning as well, right? You by playing the game, you know how it feels. You're also learning a lot from the game itself. Like even myself, like when we were developing Sifu, and I know this is not related to Jose, but I just thought it might be somewhat interesting. But like, you know, we got consultant to review the titles, and then there was this washing machine. It was a front-loading washing machine, and the consultant was like, "Oh no, it has to be a top loading washing machine to fit the environment and stuff." So I think even for me myself, like when I play games like this, I'm learning more about the culture. I'm learning more about like meanings behind the cultures as well. And I think that is actually very, very important. So if you're a developer and you really want to convey the message, I think you should definitely put it in the pitch deck. Like publishers would really, really appreciate your effort in delivering, you know, a message or experience that you want to share with the rest of the world. And I think the players would definitely, you know, learn a lot from playing the games as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. So last call for questions. We have just a couple of minutes left in our conversation. So if you would like to learn more about Kowloon, about Project Plethora, go check out their websites as well. They're really easy to find. They list neatly all the things that they did, because Plethora Project is, of course, not only the gaming company. There's a lot of things that they do outside of it, and there's big ideas behind it. And apart from this, any closing thoughts? So once your project is out now, what would you wish for to kind of
Well, I mean, maybe just to conclude, it's certainly like an invitation to join. Not only like if you're interested in the game, by all means, you know, get the game. But so Commonhood is out, but also I think that we're certainly looking for kind of expanding a community, having a conversation. If you think that any of the things that were mentioned today, maybe there's ways of kind of take them further, kind of in maybe, you know, unconventional ways. I think that I love collaborations that really would take things into, sometimes different formats, expanding, the way we practice game design, but also as you know, like my relationship with architecture. So I think that there's different avenues. By all means, reach out. We are kind of a very small team, and we are very hands-on. We're there in Discord all the time. So our Discord is always an invitation to have a conversation about these things. And if you think that the game could be improved, I mean, I'm super open to kind of really engage with that very directly, and really participate on what's the way in which this actually would work the best, right? Because there's that kind of longer ambition of long-term project is something that hopefully kind of gets demonstrated when you join that community and you see what we're doing as a studio. So yeah, the invitation is there. Hopefully, if you're passionate about some of these issues, I love the conversation with game designers as well about crafting and the details of that genre. So by all means, let's be in touch.
Any closing thoughts from Janla?
Right. Kowloon is never really a consumer-facing brand because we want developers to capture all the spotlight. We want developers to have all the attention. So I would say, please take a look at Common Herd. And then if this is something interesting to you, you can wishlist it. They are working very hard on updates and stuff. So you can, take a look at it, follow their progress, share feedback with them. I think it would be really appreciative. And then for the other titles in our portfolio, feel free to go and take a look at them. And then if you're interested, feel free to click in and check out more of the other titles. And then if anything today in our relationship that sounds interesting to everyone, feel free to reach out to Kowloon and share your projects with us as well. We have a contact us page on our website. We typically take 2 to 3 weeks time to get back to you. And then if there's any questions about how we work and stuff, feel free to also drop me an email or contact us directly on the website. And just wanted to thank everyone from joining this session. I hope that, it might be useful to you in some way. And I do hope that, we have more of these healthy and beneficial relationship in the industry in the future as well. I think when it comes to choosing a partner, it's not only that the game is a perfect fit for Kowloon, but at the same time, you're trying to find a partner that is good for you, right? So from the developer's perspective, for example, from Jose's perspective, we hope that working with Kowloon, it was also a good fit for you and not just a one-way relationship. And we hope that this will actually be more common in the industry where developers will get better terms and better relationships in general.
Okay, thanks, Jose. Thanks, Hanlu. That was really enlightening conversation. To all of you watching, I see you tomorrow at the Fireside Chat and the last day of DevGamm Game Fest. Cheers and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye, thanks.